Hey YouTube. It will only take 5 minutes to set up. How often did you say that when you were building a development environment? In today's video, I will show you how to use DevEnv to build development environments and dev containers easily. We will go through some basics and then set up a theme development environment for the popular ghost blogging platform that can easily be shared and can even be used on GitHub Codespaces or DevPods. So let's get into it. DevEnv is a tool for building development environments, and the whole concept of DevEnv is based on Nix and the Nix package manager. When you go to the DevEnv homepage, you can get a fast overview on how this is working. Here you will find a lot of documentation and examples and so on and so forth. And for the installation, basically you have only two things you need to install. You need to install the Nix package manager, and up here in the getting started guide, you have examples on how to install it on Linux, on macOS, on Windows WSL, and just on Docker. And the second one, of course, is DevEnv itself. And that's basically all of it. So I will not cover that in this video. I will rather concentrate on showing you how it works. On my editor, I have an empty directory at the moment that just holds a git ignore file. And all we need to do to get started with DevEnv is to enter DevEnv init. And this will initialize a new DevEnv project here. And as you can see, this has already done a couple of steps. It created a devenv.nix file, a devenv.yaml file, an envrc file, and the git ignore file was already there. When we have a look at the devenv.nix file, you can see we have a very simple structure here. And for those of you who have followed my Nix Flake videos, this will for sure look very familiar because this is just standard Nix code here. And this has just a couple of sections. So for example, up here, it sets an environment variable. Down here, there are some package definitions. Here we have a script definition. And here we have a shell hook that defines what should happen when we enter the DevEnv shell here. And just to start with a simple example, I will just make a very simple development environment for Go here. So what we can do here is we can enter languages.go.enable equals true and just save it. And I also would like to add the language server for Go. So I will just search that up using the devenv CLI with the search keyword. And here you can see we got two results. We got the package for the extension for NeoVim. And here we have the language server for Go. And we can just add that to packages here. And just to have it a little bit organized, we can go for packages and add the language server here. And for example, when I try to enter the executable for the language server here, you can see this is flagged red and not available. But when I save the file here and clear this out, DevEnv will add this to my environment. And as you can see here, the language server is available now and we can use it in our editor here. And now I will just make some other small additions. So for example, I will declare an environment variable named repo, where I refer to the repo I want to use for this Go project here. And what's interesting here to do is we can add a task here. For the task, I will just replace the setup task here with a simple script that will check if a go.mod file is present, and if not, it will initialize with the repo environment variable we have stated above here. And what we also could do is set a pre-commit hook here and just enable the Go formatter here. And when I save this and clear this again, DevEnv will rebuild my environment here. And here at the output, you can see we have set up the Git hook here and the setup step has been running. And after that, we have entered the shell here, and you can see that the Go mod file has been created here. As you can see, there are just a couple of steps involved to build a very simple Go development environment here. And of course, there are many, many more options. When we head over to the documentation here, you can see that on any aspect we have seen in the devenv.nix file, there's documentation on. And of course, there's further details, examples, and there's also an overview of what is supported and what not. And now let's have a look at something more complex. As I said in the introduction, I want to create a theme development environment for my own website, which is a Ghost block, and that looks like this right now. And to get started with this, I will just enter DevEnv init once again. And to get this working, we need to define a couple of goals here. So first of all, I want to have a working Ghost installation I can tinker with. Just for demo purposes, we will also include MySQL as a service. And in order to build a theme, we need Node.js and Tailwind CSS. At the end, I want this development environment to be available as a dev container I can use on GitHub Codespaces or on DevPod. So we will just work with the devenv.nix file here. And just from the complexity, I want to have this as lean as possible, so we will basically just be editing the devenv.nix file, and everything else will be built up by devenv and nix in the process. And I will just replace all the file contents here with nothing, because I want to build this from the ground up and don't have anything of the starter config in it I don't need. We will just start with some simple environment variables. We define a Ghost directory, a theme directory, and the URL for the theme repository here. And as you can see, this should go into the source folder, and the target directory for the theme after cloning it shall be within the source folder in content themes, and then the theme name here. And then I will just add some packages. So I want to have Git available, of course. And that's just how it is in the template. And then I also would like to have npm available. And for those of you who haven't followed my Nix videos, this is just something where we define the scope here for our packages. And as you can see here, for Node packages, npm, we have a slightly different package naming here. And that's something you can actually find out when you use the devenv search subcommand here. So I can just search for npm. And as you can see, this returns a couple of packages here. And down here, you can see that the search subcommand also returns the options for the keyword here that you can use in devenv. So for example, here you have languages.javascript.npm.install.enable, and it's a Boolean. The default value is false, and here you have a little explanation. And that's basically how to get to your options and your packages. And of course, you can also use the Nix package search on the NixOS homepage and the documentation on the devenv homepage. When it comes to packages, you can basically, and for the packages in this environment, you can basically add anything that the Nix package manager has to offer. That are, I don't know, around 80,000 packages. And now I add a programming language here. So we just say languages.javascript and then enable equals true. For the package, we define a custom package here just to show that it's possible. So we choose packages Node.js Slim version 18. Here I also enable pnpm and set install.enable to true. And this will basically make the environment to install dependencies for the project automatically. We will see that later on. And just to have another example for the search, I can search for Node.js Slim here. And here you can see there are different versions available here. Just to show you some intermediate process here, when I clear this out, it will start installing the dependencies here. And now, for example, I got pnpm available here. The next thing I would like to add is a process. And the process in DevEnv is usually something you want to have running during your development process. So in this case, this is the live reload. So changes are reflected immediately when they are made in the source code here. And of course, you can define multiple processes, whatever you need for your build process here. And now I will define a service. And in this case, this is MySQL. And I just enable it with enable equals true. And for the package, I will also override the default package because on Nix packages, MySQL defaults to MariaDB. And when it comes to Ghost, when you use MariaDB, the Ghost block will work for sure. But for example, the statistics on your admin panel break unless you use MySQL itself and not a drop-in replacement here. And just for this little project here, this is not really necessary. I'm just showing this for completeness because when you run the Ghost block in development mode, this will work with SQLite by default. So the database is not really needed here in this case. And of course, you could just add other things that you would usually do in a Nix configuration when setting up a MySQL service. So for example, you can ensure databases and users here. And that will make the development environment already set up the databases you need and the users and privileges that are needed to access these databases here. And when I just save this in between and clear this out, we can have a look at the new command here. Now, when I make this a little bit bigger here and I enter DevEnv up, this will start the process manager. And as you can see here, MySQL is running as a service here now. And of course, the pnpm dev command did not run successfully because this is part of the theme and the theme is not yet included in our development environment. So we can just access this here and just go on with our configuration. Then I would like to add two scripts, and these scripts are just wrappers around the Ghost CLI. So I want to have a Ghost start command and a Ghost stop command. And as you can see here, I have appended the -d and then the source directory here because I want to make sure that the Ghost instance is started in the correct directory. And now I would like to add the more complicated part. I would like to define a task here, and this task should be our environment setup here. So what this is just a bash script here, and we can just quickly go through it. This will check if a package.json file is present. And if it's not present, we will write a package.json file here. And I have two dependencies defined in here. So we have the Ghost CLI that will help us to get Ghost up and running on our local system. And here we have gscan. That's a tool to check a Ghost theme for validity. And down here, I've just declared some scripts. So for example, with the theme zip variant, this will create a zip file for our theme that can be uploaded to our live system. And then down here, we check again for the presence of a directory. And in this case, we check for the Ghost directory variable here we have defined at the top. And if the defined folder is not present, we will use the Ghost CLI to make a Ghost installation to that folder. And afterwards, we will just clone the theme from the theme repo into the directory within the Ghost installation. And that's basically all the setup task will do here. And down here, we have defined that the task should be running before entering the shell and before running any tests on the shell. In DevEnv, you can actually define multiple tasks, and they don't have to run when you enter the shell. You can just call them manually. So for example, what we could do in this environment is, I don't know, to have something to clean up our environment or to trigger the environment setup manually. So you can get as creative with this as you want to. And then I will just create a test here. And for the test, I will just use the gscan executable and point to the directory where our theme is installed. And last but not least, I want to have this at the top. I will just set devcontainer.enable equals true. And this will make DevEnv to create a devcontainer.json file we can use on Codespaces and DevPods later on. So now let's see what this does. And I will just clear this out once more. And as you can see, this will start working. And now you can see it's already started to build up a source folder here. And we just give it a second to let everything finish. And now everything is finished and set up. And you can see here we have our package.json. And here the folder source has been created. And within source, we have our Ghost installation. And in here under content themes, I also have my theme here. And what we also can do is, if I just make this bigger here, I can just execute DevEnv up once again. And now you can see the process compose TUI is starting. And here we have the MySQL service. And here we also have the live reload. And now I will just add another terminal. And when I enter Ghost ls down here, you can see that we have a Ghost instance running in our folder here. So when I head to my browser and enter localhost on port, I get to the Ghost installation here. And of course, I can use all the other commands I have defined. And of course, I can use the other commands here. So for example, I can just enter ghost stop. And this will stop my Ghost instance. And when I use the Ghost CLI, you can see that the instance is not running anymore, and I can just start it again. And now Ghost is running again. And if you are a little bit more into Nix and Nix flakes, you can of course use DevEnv just with a Nix flake. For this, we can just use the template that is provided by DevEnv. So we just enter Nix flake in it, and then we refer to the template here. And now you can see this has downloaded a couple of files, and we have a flake.nix here we can just use. And just to make it easy here, I will just copy over the DevEnv Nix from the other folder. And I will just do the same for the git ignore. And then we can just go down here under modules and delete this. And here I can just add an import for devenv.nix. And in order to have this working with direnv, I would just enter direnv allow. And as you can see, this will do exactly the same. So it will just process everything we have defined in our devenv.nix file. And here we already have our source folder, the content folder, and the themes folder. And here we have the theme we have defined. And of course, we can just execute the processes here and also have the process manager here. And as I said in the start, I also want to show you how you can use this on DevPod or Codespaces. So I have just uploaded the source code for my demo repo here to GitHub, and the only real change I have made is for the theme repo, I will just take the starter theme from Ghost, because if you want to try this out, my theme is in a private repo, so you won't be able to download it, and this makes it easier for you to follow. And now what we can just do is we can just create a new code space here. Just hit create code space, and now the code space will be set up for me. And this might take a little bit. It depends how much resources, so CPU and memory, you have allocated to the code space. And now it's finishing up. And as you can see, we already get terminal output here. So DevEnv is already starting its work here. And you can see up here, it will start building out the file structure we know from our local computer here. And unfortunately, GitHub Codespaces is really, really slow right now. So for example, when I started my DevEnv environment here, it was hanging on the setup task and the machine could just not execute it. And what I did in this case is I just called DevEnv and then tasks run and then the task name. So I needed to execute this once more manually, but now everything is working. And when I have a look here, you can see Ghost is also running here, and I can just make a Ghost stop command. And of course I can start it again. And here you can see that the code space will forward the port, and I can view it in my browser here. And I can just open another terminal here. And of course, just start our processes. And you can see we have the MySQL process running, and also the live reloading is enabled. So unfortunately, I had some hiccups with code spaces, and this is not really nice to work in and not very performant, but for some people it works, so I just wanted to show it. So as you can see with DevEnv, you can easily build up development environments, and these work on Linux, on macOS, and on Windows when you use WSL. And basically all you need is the Nix package manager and DevEnv installed. For me personally, this is very nice to use because you can really quickly set up a development environment. Of course, as I have NixOS as my daily driver, I could easily set this up just in a flake. But with DevEnv, I am much faster than writing everything myself. So that's it for today. I will link the code down in the description, and please like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, just drop a comment or contact me on Discord. So have a nice day. Bye-bye.